Most relationships don't end because someone cheated or because of one huge fight. They end because of something way smaller, something that builds up over time until it breaks everything. That something is what I call the 65% rule. What's the 65 rule? Simple. If you feel unhappy, unseen, or emotionally drained in the relationship more than 65% of the time, it's already over. You just haven't admitted it yet. I learned this the hard way. I used to be in this relationship where everything seemed fine on the surface. We laughed, we hung out, we said, I love you every night. But deep down, I was starting to feel this low key emptiness. Like we were physically there, but emotionally. I felt alone, even when I was next to her. And at first, I told myself, nah, this is just a rough patch. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. And I realized I was only happy around her like once or twice a week. That's when it hit me. If I'm only feeling good 30% of the time, then the other 6% is just surviving. And you can't build a real relationship off survival. Most people never realize this, but you don't need a dramatic breakup to prove it's not working. Sometimes the quiet disconnect is the loudest red flag. It's when conversations turn into routines. When you laugh, but it feels forced. When your phone buzzes and you hope it's someone else, just for a second of escape. And here's the wild part. Once you start ignoring that 65%, it becomes normal. You convince yourself, well, no relationship is perfect. Which is true, but there's a difference between imperfection and emotional starvation. Stay with me, because in just a moment, I'll tell you how I figured out I was lying to myself the entire time. You ever been in a relationship where everything looks fine, but your gut keeps whispering, this isn't it? Yeah, that was me. I remember this one night so clearly. We were watching a movie. I can't even tell you what it was because the whole time my brain was screaming, why do I feel so alone right now? Like I was physically right next to her, but I felt like I was miles away. And I kept thinking, this isn't normal, right? Like, this isn't what love should feel like. But here's the part they don't want you to know. Most people stay anyway, because comfort feels safer than starting over. And I was scared too. Scared to admit it wasn't working. Scared of hurting her. Scared of being the bad guy. So I stayed. And guess what happened? I started shrinking. Like, I stopped sharing what I really felt. I stopped being excited about date nights. I stopped being me. It was like I was slowly fading inside a version of a relationship I didn't even recognize anymore. And you know what hurt the most? It wasn't even her fault. We didn't hate each other. There was no big betrayal. We just weren't happy. And sometimes that's harder to accept than a clear reason to break up. Most people never realize this, but emotional silence is just as loud as yelling. If you're not talking, not opening up, not laughing like you used to, that's not a phase. That's the beginning of the end. Stay with me. Because next I'm going to tell you the one moment that finally made me walk away, even though I didn't want to. The moment I knew it was over wasn't during a fight. It was during the quietest moment of my life. So we went on this weekend trip, right? Just the two of us. I was hoping maybe a change of scenery would fix things. Like maybe we'd reconnect. Maybe we'd talk again like we used to, but instead, it was silent. Not peaceful silent. Empty silent. I remember we were sitting on this bench by the lake. The sun was going down, the water was calm, and everything around us looked perfect. But inside me, I felt nothing. And when I looked at her, I didn't see my person anymore. I saw someone I used to know. That's when it clicked. I wasn't in love, I was in a habit. And I'd been confusing comfort for connection. Here's where it gets real. You can love someone and still not be right for each other. And if that sounds brutal, trust me, living it was worse. Because it meant walking away from something that didn't hurt enough to leave, but didn't feel good enough to stay. And this is why the 65 rule matters. It's not about perfection. It's about balance. It's about how often you feel safe, seen, and alive in that relationship. And if that only happens 1 out of 3 days, bro, that's not love. That's emotional crumbs. Most people stay in that space way too long. But you don't have to. And in just a moment, I'll tell you what actually happens when you finally walk away and why it might be the best thing that ever happened to you. The moment I walked away, it wasn't this big dramatic scene. No screaming, no you ruined my life kind of vibe. It was quiet. Almost too quiet. I packed my stuff after she left for class. I remember zipping up my bag and just sitting on the edge of the bed. My heart was pounding, but not because I was sad. It was because I knew I was finally doing something honest. For the first time in months, I wasn't pretending. And when I left that door, I cried. But it wasn't grief, it was relief. Most people never realize this, but staying in the wrong relationship slowly rewires how you see yourself. You start doubting your needs, thinking maybe you're too sensitive or too needy. But you're not. You're just hungry for real connection, and there's nothing wrong with that. A few weeks later, something wild happened. I started laughing again, like really laughing. I felt lighter, and I didn't even realize how heavy that relationship had gotten until I wasn't carrying it anymore. But here's the twist. Leaving wasn't just about her. It forced me to look in the mirror, to ask myself, stayed so long, why I ignored the signs, why I kept choosing almost love instead of real love. Stay with me because in this last part, I'll share the one thing that'll help you never fall into the 65% trap again. All right, here's the truth. You can avoid the 65% rule completely, but only if you stop lying to yourself. The biggest lie I told myself was, it'll get better. And yeah, sometimes it does. But if it's been months and nothing's changed, you're not in a rough patch. You're in denial. What helped me? I started doing check-ins with myself. Every week I'd ask, do I feel seen? Do I feel safe? Do I still feel excited to be here? If the answer was no, more than yes, for more than a month, I knew I had to take action. Either fix it or face it. Most people avoid this because they're scared of being alone. But being alone with peace is 100x better than being with someone who makes you feel invisible. And guess what? When you finally walk away from the wrong thing, you create space for the right thing to show up. And it does. Might not be tomorrow, might not be a person, but peace, healing, self-love, that stuff sneaks in when the noise dies down. So here's the takeaway. Don't wait for something to break to admit it's broken. If you're unhappy 65% of the time, that's your answer. You don't need anyone's permission to choose peace. You deserve more than survival. You deserve something that makes you feel alive every single day. And if no one's told you that yet, I just did.